If I want to get yelled at for an hour, I don't need to turn on the television and get screamed at by my president. I have 3 little kids. I have a 5-day-old. I can get screamed at by turning off my TV and just turning on my ears. It's not all that difficult in my house. Yet last night, I feel like I spent an hour and change getting screamed at by Joe Biden. That's what it was.
Come on, man.
Oh, my goodness. Happy Friday. It's good to be here on KCMO. I'm happy I'm here with you because after last night, I couldn't fall asleep. Just getting yelled at by an old man. Literally, old man yells at cloud is what I watched last night.
We needed Sleepy Joe.
Yeah, I would have taken Sleepy over whatever the heck that was. Whatever he took before he walked in for that State of the Union speech last night, some good stuff. I'll leave it at that. Jeez. No one really ever remembers what is said during a State of the Union. But people remember how it makes them feel. People remember whether or not they feel like the leader of the free world and the president of the United States has control. Whether or not he has the ability to lead his country in a direction that is going to be positive for the majority of the American people. It's not about specific policy ideas. It's not about whether or not, Joe Biden has this grandiose new policy. It's going to knock your socks off. No, it's about how did you make me feel? Did I feel like you had control? Did I feel like the nation was in good hands under your leadership? And I don't care if you voted for the guy or not, how you could possibly come away with that warm and fuzzy feeling of strong leadership and American values. I don't know how you could possibly take that away from last night. Because all I heard was a guy who was yelling at me for about an hour and 8 minutes. And for those of you gamblers, the under hit. It was an hour and 8 minutes, and the over-under in the offshore betting markets was an hour and 9 minutes. And not only that, but last night it was just so out of touch from Joe Biden. Not only was he yelling at me, which was just such a wild turnoff, this speech felt like it was written by a non-binary graduate student from Brown. Nothing about it made sense. Here's Joe Biden in a re-election year trying to explain to the American people, the swing voter, remember, whether or not he's capable of doing another 4 years and why, frankly, he should be allowed another 4 years in the White House. And what does he decide to lead his speech with? Not the border, of course. Not inflation, not the economy, not grocery prices, not anything like that. Joe Biden chooses to lead his speech, his State of the Union last night, talking about Ukraine.
My purpose tonight is to wake up the Congress and alert the American people that this is no ordinary moment either. Not since President Lincoln and the Civil War have freedom and democracy been under assault at home as they are today. What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas at the very same time. Overseas, Putin of Russia is on the march, invading Ukraine and sowing chaos throughout Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not.
So you see what he did there, too. He tied in Ukraine to democracy under attack overseas and right here at home. That was laying the foundation for last night's speech. Ukraine would have been fine to talk about. I'm not against talking about Ukraine. It's obviously a major story right now in the world and has been for the better part of 2 years. But talking about Ukraine would have been great at minute mark number 47. Out of the gates, the American people are hurting. Poll after poll shows that the American people, when it comes to their finances, when it comes to their budgets, things are tight right now. Gas prices are going up. I was driving by my station this morning, my Phillips 66, and I saw another 10 to 15% or 10 to 15 cent hike on there per gallon. And that's really been the story for the last 3 years. Americans can't save. Their dollar does not go nearly as far as it did 3-4 years ago. And they want answers as to how that can change. And instead, what do we get? Hey, how about those guys in Ukraine who we've given billions and billions and billions of your tax dollars to? You can be like me. You can see value in supporting Ukraine while also understanding that there's got to be an end game here. But understanding more importantly and more broadly that the American people right now do not wake up every day and think about Ukraine. They don't think about Zelensky. Now I'm going to do my Biden whisper, which I wish we got more of Sleepy Joe's whisper last night. They think about themselves. That's what they think about. They think about their own kitchen table. They're not thinking about whether or not Zelensky needs another 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 billion dollars. Even though I think there's obviously value in doing that, to start off a speech, a State of the Union with this issue just shows an out of touch White House. And that's what last night was all about. A guy who's completely out of touch. Some are going to say it's fiery. Joe showed that fiery zone. The Irishman was out in full force. No, he was a screaming man at a nursing home. Have you ever been to a nursing home? You know, you walk in to see a relative, maybe a grandparent, an aunt, and uncle, and there's always, that guy in the wheelchair who's like yelling at the nurses, and no one really knows why. Maybe his diaper's a little wet or something. That was Joe last night. He was just screaming. For no apparent reason, he was screaming. And when he was done with Ukraine, what was topic number 2 last night? January 6th.
We must be honest. The threat to democracy must be defended. My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th. I will not do that. This is the moment to speak the truth and to bury the lies. Here's the simple truth. You can't love your country only when you win.
So January 6th was topic number 2 within 10 minutes of the State of the Union. Was this a political rally or a State of the Union? And just for the record, I seem to remember a time in this country not all that long ago when dozens and dozens of celebrities insisted that if the Orange Cheeto guy won an election, they were moving to Canada. They were leaving the country. How many ended up doing that, by the way? I'm just looking for the receipts on that one. This was not a State of the Union that was intended to connect in any way with a swing voter, a right-of-center voter, or even a left-of-center voter. This was a political speech in front of the country that was intended to do one thing and one thing only: shore up the most progressive parts of the Democratic base. That's it. And I guess if that's going to be the litmus test for how you view this as a success, it was a huge success for Joe Biden. But I think after watching last night, Donald Trump ends up being an enormous winner. 913-408-7957 is our studio line and our text line. As we react to this all morning, Mark Alford is going to be here in just over an hour at 7:20. He was sitting there. He saw it all firsthand. So we'll be getting more of that from him as we roll through the morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. And make sure you're streaming this morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app. You know, the best thing Biden said last night, it was the first couple of words that came out of his mouth.
If I were smart, I'd go home now.
Yeah, that was great. I was like, yeah, go, Joe, go home now. Let's go. Call it a day there, big boy. Yay.
If I were smart, I'd go home now.
Yep, that's right. It was getting close to nap time anyway. So he was juiced up on some good stuff yesterday, no doubt about it. After State of the Union 2024 came and went last night, and Joe Biden spent most of his time yelling at you through your television. That's what you got last night from your president. John is in Gardner at 913-408-7957. What's up, John? Good morning.
Hey, Pete, good morning to you, and congratulations on the new baby. And I am really just what KCMO is doing. I'm just really glad you're out there, pal. I'm just really a big fan of the station and what you're doing. So keep it going.
Well, thank you, John. And we should be loud and clear now in Gardner on 95.7.
You know what? Yeah, and just with that, I set my alarm for 6 a.m. I got to hear what Pete said about last night. So, man, I haven't quite had my first cup of coffee yet, but dude, I watched. I like that opening statement he had too. That was the best. But I went to bed thinking, oh God, the guy, they shot him up for, with B12 or something, and he's back on his game, and oh crap, and people on Facebook were all jazzed. But listening to you this morning, I felt a little bit better. But yeah, I loved your take on it. Like the guy was like yelling at me for an hour. I was kind of my expectation. I wanted the guy to like fall off the podium or have some major gap or, lose his place, which didn't happen. But it's like, oh, man, for what it was, I guess he did a pretty good job with it. But,
so you made it through the entire hour and 8 minutes, or you turned it off early?
I really wanted to see something huge happen. Was that Marjorie Taylor Greene that was yelling at him with the Trump stuff?
Yes.
Okay, I kind of like that. And the potato chip, what was that about? The potato chip bag.
I missed the potato chip bag.
Yeah, he went on this the thing with his Snickers. He was talking about the amount of
shrinkflation. Yes.
Yeah, he did the shrinkflation bit, and I'm like, I don't know if that really hit home with anybody or not. I was wanting more of those moments, but I don't know, dude. I thought, oh man, it's going to be tough in November, but I just feel a whole lot better after listening to your take on it.
Well, thank you for that, John. I appreciate that, man. And I'm glad you're tuned in down there in Gardner, setting that alarm at 6 a.m.
Man. Big time. Radio's not going anywhere else, really, for real. So
I love it.
Keep it going, sir.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you, man. Listen, we're going to talk today about what Joe Biden said. But as I started the show with, no one's ever going to remember what Joe Biden said. Do you remember what he said last year or the year before that? Do you remember what Donald Trump said in his State of the Unions? No, you don't, because you're like a normal person with a life. You don't work for these people. It's about how these speeches make you feel. Now, John's right. I saw a lot of that social media feedback, and Biden's fired up. He's fiery tonight. That was coming from, many in the media. I guess if that's your definition of fiery, getting yelled at by an old guy for an hour, then sure, it was fiery. But what American who has been struggling through the last 3 years of this presidency with inflation, the economic woes, is going to be like, that's what I needed last night. That makes me feel a whole lot better about myself and my situation, John Anthony.
It's always funny, the rhetoric that comes from the left. But this all feels to me like when I was a kid and we watched the Soviet Union. So he's being lauded for his ability to stand up and make it through the speech. That was wow, he was on point. That's not what you would typically critique a State of the Union speech on.
No, yeah.
So this whole notion about, is the leader healthy? Well, last time we saw him in public and blah, 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 so we've got him all, he was all pumped up and ready to go, and he was doing that Westworld robot thing where he hardly blinks. Got this real dark color in his eyes. So where is he looking? Is he 1,000-yard stare?
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
I'm like, he was just being lauded for getting through the speech, and that's nothing to celebrate.
No, it's not. I mean, that should be the base level expectation for the leader of the freaking free world.
Topic of conversation.
Yeah.
Right? Relative to the speech.
Wow, congrats. You stayed up till 10:30 p.m. on a weeknight, Joe. I mean, can I get you an extra scoop of ice cream? Are you kidding me?
He's probably still up, whatever they put him in.
Yeah, whatever he was on, he's just coming down from, right?
He's waiting for the Kelsey Jam announcement.
Yeah. He was not going to sleep anytime soon after that. But you look at, this poll from CBS, and I was reading this. This is from March 6th. It's 2 days old. And the poll, or the article reads here from CBS, as voters head to the polls on Super Tuesday, many voted with one issue top of mind, the state of the U.S. economy. A recent CBS News poll found that 65% of Americans remember the economy under Donald Trump as being good, compared with 38% giving the current economy under Joe Biden the same positive assessment. Almost 6 in 10 voters polled by CBS News describe the economy under Joe Biden as bad. You would think that if you're the president and it's the State of the Union and you are getting set for a re-election year, you would try to convince the American people that their number one issue that they're concerned about, that they're not that they're wrong about how they feel, but why they should be optimistic about the future, right? It's always arrogant when politicians, and Biden's done a lot of this the last 3 years. Hey, the economy is actually better than you think. What you feel about the economy, what you feel about your kitchen table right now is wrong. That's the approach he's taken. But what he should have done last night is lead with the economy. And yes, he's going to do all the dopey talking points that I'll get to here in a second. But talk about why the future is bright economically under his leadership. I'm not saying I believe that. I don't. But that would have been a place to start to at least show that you're on the same page with the American people. To at least show that you are empathizing with their situation. And you could have done the Biden spin. Hey, COVID set us back. And then there was the war in Ukraine. And, we're trying to dig out of this stuff. But inflation's come down and yada, yada, yada. You could have done all that. But showing that you are at least connecting with the American voter, with the American family who has been stung by these economic issues the last 3 years. That's the least he could have done. Instead, we had to wait about 35 minutes into the speech after we got through, abortion, January 6th, Ukraine. Then, we got around to some economic talk. There was a little bit of that.
Building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down. Investing in all America, in all Americans, to make sure everyone has a fair shot. And we leave no one behind. The pandemic no longer controls our lives. The vaccines that saved us from COVID are now being used to beat cancer, turning setback into comeback. That's what America does. That's what America does. Folks, my inherited economy is on the brink. Now our economy is literally the envy of the world. 15 million new jobs in just 3 years, a record. A record.
No, stop with the 15 million new jobs. These are jobs replaced from COVID that were lost artificially during COVID. But once again, when that's all you've got, that's what you've got to run with. Those are the kind of economic data points you have to use. But that took 35 minutes to get to. And let's be honest, many of you were watching. But the person right now who's listening to Miley Cyrus on the radio, if they caught 10 minutes last night, that would have been good. And in the first 10 minutes, all they heard about was Ukraine, January 6th, and abortion. And you tell me how that's connecting with everyday Americans trying to raise families, save for retirement, and put food on the table. 913-408-7957. The biggest debacle from last night. Next. Well, if there was a moment last night that stood out above the rest, if there was that one memorable moment from Joe Biden last night, it was a moment that was off script. It was not something that was in the teleprompter at the State of the Union. It was tied to Laken Riley, the young girl who was killed a couple of weeks ago on a running trail at the University of Georgia. She was a nursing student. She visited her friends at UGA. And Jose Ibarra, allegedly, I guess we still have to say that, killed her on a running trail as she was visiting friends at their college going out for a run. And last night, as Joe Biden was walking into the State of the Union, Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia was there with a MAGA hat on and a shirt that said, "Say her name." And that was in reference to Laken Riley. And Marjorie Taylor Greene gave Joe Biden a pin that said, "Say her name," and had Laken Riley's name on it. And Joe Biden, to his credit, I guess, took the pin. I'm not sure he knew what he was taking, but he took the pin. And then last night, Marjorie Taylor Greene threw Joe Biden off his game. And he got Joe Biden to reference Laken Riley in what will be probably the only moment that stands out past today in the State of the Union address.
I'd be a winner. Not really. Lincoln Riley.
Lincoln Riley? First off, he says Lincoln Riley. Like the coach at USC, the former Oklahoma football coach. I mean, Lincoln Riley's just an overrated, backstabbing college football coach. It's not Lincoln, Joe. It's not Lincoln Riley. It's Laken Riley. If you're going to say her name, at least say it right. Laken, not Lincoln. That's a college football coach.
An innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals?
What?
To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look.
Now, I'm not sure what Joe Biden losing a child to natural causes has to do with Laken Riley's family losing their daughter who went out for a run at the hands of an illegal immigrant who dragged her, off a running trail and killed her after beating her to a pulp. I'm not sure what the correlation is between those two moments, but heck, it doesn't mean Joe's not going to try. He does the same thing with military families after they lose a loved one in battle. He says, I've lost a son too. And I understand trying to be empathetic, but comparing yourself and your situation to what the Laken Riley family is going through right now is quite an insult. That family is reeling. That family does not have their daughter because of Joe Biden's border policies. We know that Laken Riley's alleged killer came across the southern border in the last couple of years and, went from Texas to New York down to Georgia. There is a direct correlation between the border policies of this administration and the death of somebody like Laken Riley. Because if there were any decent border policies, a guy like Jose Ibarra would not be in this country as an illegal immigrant. So Joe Biden was a little flustered last night. First off, I want to play that clip one more time because the start of it doesn't make sense. The middle doesn't make sense. None of it really makes a lot of sense.
I'd be a winner, not really.
I'd be a winner, not really? What are we doing here? What the heck is that? What was that even in reference to? I'd be a winner, not really? And then Marjorie Taylor Greene starts yelling about Laken Riley.
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand.
How many thousands are being killed by illegals, he says there. What does that even mean, John?
I don't think that interjection was played like he wanted it to play.
Yeah.
It was almost like, she's just one of.
Yeah, exactly.
It felt like that. What?
He was
That's the
kind
way
of
it played as the words came out of his mouth. I'm not sure what he meant.
He was saying, he made it seem like, she's just one of 1,000, Mm-hmm. It's like, well, that's not really helping your cause.
No, that's kind of the point.
Yeah, that's the problem here, Joe Biden. That Laken Riley is not the only one. She's the most prominent one, but not the only one. That's for darn sure. So it's like, what are you going for there? He was so thrown off his game in that moment that he didn't realize he kind of owned himself as he was trying to make a point about Laken Riley. And oftentimes, I was listening to and watching Fox before the State of the Union last night, and Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, he was like, I hope Republicans don't yell at Joe. It doesn't play well on TV. It's not really good. And I heard Kevin McCarthy say that, and I thought to myself, I'm not sure I agree, but okay. All right, that's fine. Well, actually, and I'm not a big Marjorie Taylor Greene fan. Like, I'm not. I don't really care for her antics and her shtick. But it actually played out really well from a Republican standpoint last night, that moment. Because here's the thing. If you did that to Obama would have been smart and slick enough to make you look like a fool. He would have made you look bad in the audience. But Joe doesn't have the mental acuity to do that. I mean, he really never did, but at least a generation ago, he kind of had that Irish way about him that was mildly likable and was somewhat quick on his feet. That's gone for Joe Biden. So Marjorie Taylor Greene threw him off his game, got him to say Laken Riley, but he said Lincoln Riley, and then made some weird commentary about how many thousands are being killed by illegals, which doesn't even, frankly, make any sense. And it made Joe look really bad, and it made him look wildly out of touch that he couldn't even say her name right. And then after the fact, did you see what Nancy Pelosi said last night on CNN about this? So Nancy Pelosi goes on CNN, and she comments on Joe Biden talking about Laken Riley, and she was very upset about how Joe Biden referred to Laken Riley's alleged killer.
Now, you should have said undocumented, but that's not a big thing.
What?
Okay. What's the big thing about
No,
it?
I actually wasn't even going to ask about that. I was just going to ask more about the moment. But you do think that he should have said undocumented? That wasn't going to be my question.
Well, we usually say undocumented. He said
Nancy Pelosi was upset that Joe Biden called Laken Riley's killer, Jose Ibarra, an illegal. He should have said undocumented. Are you kidding me?
Now, you should have said undocumented.
Are you kidding me? Nancy Pelosi is more worried about what we're calling alleged murderers who should not even be in this country than she is about Laken Riley or anybody in her family. Think about that. The way she dismissively talks about the situation, well, you should have said undocumented. Yeah. That right there tells you all you need to know about how many of our leaders view the border and view the fallout from the border and view what happens to everyday Americans in the wake of a border crisis they created. Laken who? They don't care about Laken Riley. They don't give a rip about Laken Riley's family. They just want to make sure that Jose Ibarra is not referred to as an illegal. It's undocumented, says Nancy Pelosi. That right there, combined with Joe's reaction, is how the party views the immigration crisis in a nutshell. Joe can't say her name. He forgets it even when people are yelling it at her. And one of the leaders in the House of Representatives on that side of the aisle was more offended by what Joe Biden called Jose Ibarra than she was about Laken Riley and her name and her legacy. 913-408-7957.
I came to office determined to get us through one of the toughest periods in the nation's history. We have. It doesn't make news, but news in 1,000 cities and towns, the American people are writing the greatest comeback story never told.
That the president of the United States last night. He only had a few of those hiccups, shall we call them, throughout the State of the Union. Good morning. It is a Friday. It's great to be here on KCMO. So Joe calls last night the greatest comeback story never told. There are thousands of Americans across the country or thousands of towns across the country spearheading that comeback story. And that is true. That may be the truest thing he said all night. I agree with that. The American people, you are resilient. You are working your tail off to try to make it through what has been a very difficult 3-year window, 3-year span here. There's no doubt about that. But the people in charge are not doing you any favors. The people in charge are not helping that situation. They're not helping you at this moment in time try to build your business, make your dollar stretch further, allow you to save for retirement. They're not doing it. They've got you behind the 8 ball. They're squeezing you every which way they can, right? Whether it's at the grocery store, at the gas pump, whether it's locally when it comes to property taxes. I mean, I won't even get into it. I got my valuation the other day from the state of Kansas and Johnson County, and I'm like, great, here we go again. As my property tax bill just went up, $150 a month or $100 a month the other month. So everyone is feeling the pinch. Everyone is feeling the squeeze. And Joe Biden says, hey, we're living the American dream. We're going to make it through. That is true, but it's not because of the people in charge. It's in spite of the people in charge. Because the American people are resilient. But they're also looking at their own situation and they're saying, gosh, how do I get this dollar to stretch further? And it took Joe 40 minutes to get to it last night. But eventually what he came around to is your life will get better when billionaires pay more taxes. That was kind of the pitch from Joe as he went full-blown class warfare last night on the American people.
There are 1,000 billionaires in America. You know what the average federal tax is for those billionaires? No. They're making great sacrifices, 8.2%.
All right, let's stop right there. The billionaire who pays 8.2% in taxes. Let's think about this because you're smart, right? You're not one of these other radio audiences in town who's going to hear that. That's outrageous. I'm paying 20, 25%. This guy's paying 8%. He's a billionaire. Let's be smart because you're really smart. I know you are. You're tuned in right now, so you're really smart. Even if you disagree with me, I know you're smart. No one makes $1 billion a year on a W-2. You don't get a paycheck every 2 weeks off a $1 billion salary. That doesn't exist, right? If you're a billionaire, and there's 1,000 of them in this country, there's not that many, all in all, 1,000 out of 330 million. You own a business, right? You founded Meta, like Mark Zuckerberg. You're Jeff Bezos. You don't collect a paycheck that would suggest you're subject to, the highest tax rate of 35%. You make money off of, owning your business and your other businesses and your investments and things like that. You're not making it off of a salary. You might be drawing a salary, but you're not drawing a $1 billion a year salary. So naturally, when you're talking about people that own businesses and people that make money through investments, their tax rates are naturally going to be lower. And they should be lower because we should want people to invest in the markets and in businesses because that spurs more economic growth. Are you going to tax Jeff Bezos on his Amazon stock or whatever, he wants to withdraw and pay taxes on? You're going to make him pay, 40% or whatever it might be on long-term capital gains? That would destroy the stock market. The only really good thing that's, happened in the last 3 years has been the market. And if you start taxing people on long-term capital gains, 30, 40%, the market is not going to have a whole lot of success. Why would you risk your capital in the market when you have to pay 30, 40% on any gains you make in the market? That would be insane. So for Joe to talk about the tax rate of a billionaire is completely disingenuous and is intended for the low information voter.
It's far less than the vast majority of Americans pay. No billionaire should pay a lower federal tax rate than a teacher, a sanitation worker, or a nurse.
That's it right there. That's the line. That is for the person that does not pay attention. No billionaire should be paying less in taxes than the nurse or the teacher. Well, I promise you they pay a whole lot more in taxes. Their percentage may be less. And hey, you know what, Joe? If the answer here is to have a flat tax across the board of 8 or 9% or 10% in this country, I'm all for that. Let's have a flat tax at 10%. Everyone pays the same rate, and we're off to the races. I love that idea. Of course, that's not what he's implying. That's not what he's going for. But if that's a roundabout way to get to a flat tax, sign me up. I'm all in. But something tells me that's not exactly what he had in mind. 913-408-7957. Before we hit the top of the hour, I've got a minute for Dennis. He's in Bonner Springs hanging out. Good morning, D.
Hey, Pete, thanks for listening last night. I don't know how you did it, brother.
Hey.
I don't know if it you don't remember, but that is one thing that the former vice president wants to do. He wants to tax unrealized capital gains.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be sure. Hey, and thanks again for listening, because I couldn't do it.
Hey,
I listened for about 20 minutes.
That's what I'm here for, D. That's what I'm here for. No, you're right.
Hey, one thing real quick.
Yeah.
Saturday, I turn on TV, going to watch some college basketball, and what in the world do I have to see? Again, Villanova. Hey, buddy, have a good day.
Yeah, tough one against Seton Hall the other night. My Villanova Wildcats are on the bubble. I'll have to get that figured out. They need to win this weekend. I think they're playing Creighton. But, yeah, Joe does want to tax unrealized capital gains. So if you own a stock, well, guess what? You'll get taxed on the gains of the stock even if you haven't sold it. That is nuts.